I mean, not that you don't care when that happens, and there's usually a reason, and things aren't completely black and white, but you want to hear what the perspective is, but it's a little easier after all the years, my great grandmother lived to be 111, and her saying was, something like, please yourself, please one, please them all, please none. And it's really tough to say, that's okay that you think I'm horrible. It's like, it's tough, but yeah, I mean, what can you do?
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Everything Band, a podcast that features conversations with composers, conductors, and performers of music for winds and percussion. My name is Mark Connor. I'm a composer and educator, and each week I have the good fortune to speak with and share the stories and wisdom of musicians and teachers in the band community. I'm thrilled to announce a new partnership between the Everything Band podcast and Kaleidoscope Adventures, a full-service tour company specializing in student group travel. With a former educator as its CEO, Kaleidoscope Adventures is dedicated to changing student lives through travel to over 40 destinations. They offer high-quality service and an attention to detail that comes from more than 25 years of student travel experience. Trust Kaleidoscope's outstanding staff to focus on your group's one-of-a-kind adventure so that you can focus on everything else. The Everything Band podcast is a proud member of the Music Teachers Development Podcast Network. The Muted Network provides support in the form of audio on-demand programming designed by and for music educators. You can find more information about our network at mutedpodcasts.com. Before we begin, I'd like to thank all of you for listening. I appreciate your time and hope that you are finding value from these interviews. I rely on word of mouth and social media to bring the show to new listeners. If you think you know one or two people who might find these interviews useful, please let them know about it. You can also help by following me and sharing posts on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. Remember, help your students live up to the best that is in them through music. And now, on to my next guest, Renee Todd. Hi, Renee.
Hi, Mark. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for joining me tonight. You were in North Carolina, and there's a hurricane off the coast.
Yes, it's not been too pretty for the folks in the coast, but we've been fine in Raleigh.
So, Renee, can you introduce yourself for the listeners and tell everyone what you do and where you are?
I am a middle school band director in Raleigh, North Carolina, and this is year 27 for me in teaching, and the 7th, I believe, year at my middle school, Ligon Middle School.
You were recommended to me by Aris Golden, a former guest on the show, and I know Aris was in North Carolina, and so I'm really happy to have you.
It's great to be here. Aris is a good friend. I met her many years ago when I was playing in a community band, and I heard someone make some comments from the back, and I was like, oh, okay, I'm going to like this person. She's funny. So we've been friends ever since, and always up to a lot of trouble, but it's been great. She's been actually a great mentor.
Renee, can you tell everyone your musical story? How did you get your start as a kid? What's your instrument, and how did you end up being a musician?
So I'm the third child, the one that gets to play, I think, whatever's hand-me-down. My parents were really good about getting all of us in music lessons. So I had piano lessons from a young age, like maybe 5 or something. And when it was time to join the band in Maryland, it starts in 4th grade, where I'm from. And kind of one of those things you were talking about where it's a pull-outs type situation. And my older sisters were in the band. They were in high school, and they played clarinet. So my mom pretty much told me, Renee, you're going to play clarinet, because I think they had moved on to like bass clarinet or something. And so I was going to play clarinet. And then my friend across the street, Amy, came down the street playing her sister's trumpet, just, blah, blah, down the street. And I was like, oh my God, that's the coolest thing ever. I'm going to play that. So my mom was shocked when I came home and said, guess what? I filled out my form. I want to play trumpet. So that's kind of how it started. I sang in a group at church, played piano, trumpet. Elementary school was fun. We had this great elementary school band director. Mr. Bill Connish started us, and then our school was out in the country. And so a lot of band directors would have that job early on. And then as another job opened up, they would move in. to the city. And so we kind of went through a few directors. Mr. Bocanish was great. He started us. And then we got Mr. Burton. He was fantastic. He had us playing, oh my goodness, it was so the 70s. He had us playing on like 12C mouthpieces and Beach Boys medley. I remember hitting a high C in 6th grade. And we thought we were like fantastic, and I probably played half the notes wrong. But then we went through this whole series he left and he got a high school gig, and he left after 6th grade. And then through 7th and 8th grade, we went through a string of middle school directors, and they didn't last, they didn't last more than 6 months. And I think, I've taught high school, I've taught elementary, and I've taught middle. I think I like middle school because my middle school had so many holes in it,
How about high school? What was that like?
So that's why that was the carrot. Everybody wanted to stay in band because they loved Mr. Batson. He had been there forever. He was the kind of director. He was quiet. He was a good musician. He was a strong musician, but he didn't always, perhaps it was just a big band. And so he wasn't very vocal on all the instruction he wanted us to do. So, but we all loved him, and he could just look at you, and you would do always the right thing. You always wanted to please Mr. Batson. But he had a band program that was very much like a melting pot. It was all different kinds of kids from the school, and we were a decent band. I think we played, a lot of transcriptions, Barbara Seville, William Tell. Every once in a while there was like Clifton Williams, but it wasn't maybe the finest tune band as far as that goes. Like, we didn't play everything, I'm sure, perfect, but there was a lot of music and a lot of intent, and there was a lot of pride and respect. And so I think he taught us all to be a band, which I think is very important. We all needed each other to make music.
Do you have any lessons that you take from those teachers that you still apply in your classroom today?
Well, absolutely. I had to also, when I was in high school, I joined chorus because the chorus teacher, she came over, and her current choir, when she first got there, their reading ability was not, super. So she also was a French horn player. So she came over to the band, and the way the schedule worked, you could be in both. So she wanted to see if there were any kids that wanted to sing, and she knew we could read music. So I did both all through high school. I think between the two of them, Ms. Brohan and Mr. Batson, they were such different styles of teachers, but they had a lot of integrity in what they did, and they cared about the kids. Music always was important, but the kids themselves were to the forefront.
So let me ask you, Renee, so what moment in high school did you know that you were going to be a professional musician or a music teacher? When did that happen?
I think probably my sophomore year of high school. I really enjoyed singing, but trumpet, was my main focus. And I got picked to be a leader, trumpet section leader, then drum major. I went to the George Parks Drum Major Academy at Westchester, went to the summer programs there. And I loved all things band. I loved how, I loved the music aspect of it. And then I liked being able to be a leader. I think that was rewarding to me to help make things better.
Yeah, I think a lot of people who become band directors have those same sort of impulses that, we see a lot of people who are now band directors who were their high school drum major or were in leadership positions.
Yeah, and I think that just kind of all of the leadership, training is all about how you're going to get so much more out of it for what you put in, and you really do learn that. So you think, well, why not continue? And plus music's pretty awesome.
Indeed. I never wanted to be the drum major because I always just wanted to play. I always thought the drum major doesn't get to play. I don't want to do that.
That's true.
That was how I thought about it, because maybe I was the quintessential trumpet player that I always wanted everyone to hear me. That's terrible to say, but it was true when I was 17 for sure.
It is tough to make that decision. And a lot of times, band directors won't choose a trumpet player for that reason. So
how about college? Where did you end up, and how did that decision get made?
I grew up in Dorchester County, Maryland, and the folks around me in the schools, and basically a lot of the students sort of went to schools within 2 hours or so. But I had my sights on a little bit bigger school and program, so I actually drove myself to a college audition, set it up with the counselor, and my friend Amy, the same one that came down the street with the trumpet, went with me, and I went and took an audition and auditioned at University of Maryland College Park, and Emerson Head was the trumpet teacher. John Wakefield was the director of bands, and Richmond Sparks was the assistant director and director of the marching band. So I took an audition, and I remember thinking I had no idea what I was doing. I took lessons in elementary school when I started on trumpet, and then I wasn't able to afford lessons, and we didn't really have a lot of trumpet teachers in the area, if at all, I think, when I was in school, except my friend was in college. So when she came home, I would kind of play duets and learn. She was in music school, what I could. And then we weren't too far from Annapolis. So every once in a while we get a lesson with someone in the service bands there and the Navy band. College itself was a great experience. Did drum major there, did marching band. It's for Maryland, the size of the school it was one of those scholarships where you remain in good standing, which meant you had to play in everything. But I think I was able to, and I think I was able to still practice and do all those things, but it was tough. Your chops wear out. But it was a good education. I like the way they set up their methods classes, but the real education is always on the job. But it was a good baseline. I don't think any institution can totally prepare you for that first beginning band class or that first wind ensemble rehearsal.
No, and 20 years of my career hasn't prepared me either. So. I don't know. What grade do you start your kids?
6th grade. However, there's kids coming in. We're a magnet school, and kids basically apply to get into the magnet school. It's not by audition. It's gifted and talented. So you apply. So it's more lottery based. And then there's an AIG component to it as well. But our main feeder has a band program, and it's great. They start in 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade. Maybe 20 of my kids come already playing. And then there's Wiley Elementary. There's a couple elementary schools that have band programs. So out of all my 6th graders, I would say 30, 35 come already playing. And then those kids, I'm working on switching them to a different instrument, getting them the secondary horns. And then I have 50 straight up beginners, and they come from probably 25 to 30 elementary schools. I'm a big data freak, so I'm always collecting. I haven't done that this year to see all the schools they come in from. Because kids will drive their parents will drive an hour to get them to school because it's from all over Wake County, or 2 hours by bus. I mean, it's the county is not that big. It's just traffic,
And where in Raleigh is the school?
It's downtown. So it's it's the east southeast side of Raleigh, and so that's typically the inner city schools. One of the ways that and it's an old magnet system where it's gifted and talented, and it's stayed around. It's been 1954 the school was built, and I think it was turned into a magnet. It was a high school, and turned it into a magnet around the 80s. And yeah, it's been remodeled. But there's quite a few in Wake County in the inner city area.
Wow. And so how about your first gig after Maryland? Where was that? What was that all about?
Oh, wow. So I look back on this now and it just makes me laugh. I had this, so drum major, right? Trumpet player. I'm setting this up so it's perfect. And then, did well in my conducting classes. In my head, I did, right? Mm-hmm. And so I sent out 5 nearest states, looking for like a grade 6 program, which is grade 5, like in other states. But I wanted this high school gig with like a wind ensemble and sent my resume out all over. So I did end up I went to West Virginia, Beckley, West Virginia. And
I know where that is.
Yeah, it's on the way. Yeah, when you're traveling through, right? The first year out, and I would have never hired me, I think. I'm like, why? But I think maybe they saw the good underneath. I don't know. But yeah, it was a high school that had straight superior ratings for 14 years. And I was walking in after that director.
Oh, no.
But it's okay because she went out on bonding leave, and it was a year bonding leave. And so it was a temporary job, and I knew that. And luckily, I say that luckily, it wasn't for that guy, but she left maybe March or April. And so there was a poor guy who had to truly follow her within the year. And he had a rough time. So then when I came in, I was the second person, so it wasn't as hard. But I pretty much, she had an open door, and I talked to her all the time. But that first job was like, wow. In fact, this wouldn't seem surprising to some, but the high school band director where I was for my first job and the coach, the football coach, didn't get along. So when I showed up to school, the AP showing me around, and he was like, well, here's your field. And I was like, what? He said, here's your field. The band director and football coach couldn't get along. So we leveled out these trees, and you have the 20 to the 20. And I was like, but I don't see a field. He was like, well, yeah, you've got to line it. And this was before cell phones, right? So I had to go to a payphone. I called my college marching band director, Dr. Sparks. And I'm like, how do you line a field? I'm pretty sure that field is still crooked to this day. The right angles were almost right angles. So, but it was fun. It was a good year. And then everybody shifted, and I got like the worst program in the county because everybody shifted up. I was the young one, but we managed to make a lot of progress, and yeah, so that's how it started.
And so, how long were you in West Virginia?
Ooh, I want to say 3 years. So I did the high school 1 and the junior high for 2, and then I applied and got the big high school there, Woodrow Wilson. Or at least it seemed like that was the big job there. And then once I got it, I had to make a decision. My fiance at the time was going to grad school, for landscape architecture and at either UVA or NC State. So it was like one of those things, I need to either stay here. If I take this job, this is a big band program. This is like a 10-year gig. So I either have to take the job or go to North Carolina. So I went to North Carolina. I didn't see myself staying in West Virginia that long. So it was beautiful though. It was near like the New River Gorge, but it didn't quite have enough going on with the arts for me. So
yeah, that is a beautiful part of West Virginia for sure. We drive through there every year on our way to North Carolina from St. Louis.
Yeah, a good friend of mine is at WVU now, Stephen Lytle. So it's I can't wait to get back up there to see him.
So you moved to Raleigh. And then did you take a middle? Is this the job you have now, or was there another one in there?
No. So back then, no one had broken rule number 1 or 2. So no money or other things that had to happen. So or retired or died. So I took an elementary job teaching general music, recorders, the whole bit. And so, which I did this for a while, and turns out in this county, if the principal likes you and you're offered a band position, if it's after May 1st, which most band positions for middle school or high school aren't going to open before May 1st, they do not have to release you. So I had a couple of jobs that opened, but my principal would always like me. So, which seems really weird. Yeah. And that's kind of how that worked. And it just so happened like the third time around, that principal had left, and there was an interim principal who had done middle school. And when she first got there, I said, "Hi, my name is Renee Todd. I've been here. I really enjoy teaching music to the kids here. However, my passion is teaching band. And if you know of any positions, please let me know. That was my intro. And she did. And so then I got to open a school.
Oh, awesome.
Which I had never done before. And boy, was that fun. Really. Just you get to build the program. You get to decide, how do I want to do this? And I just collected as much information as I could. And they actually let me choose a lot of the instruments. There was a set guideline, but they let me, instead of 4 summer bassoons, I laid that out and got 2 Fox-Renard 222s. So they let me make some decisions that I, worked for me anyway.
So you mentioned that you studied up and you got advice. What and who were your resources for opening the program? Where were you turning?
Oh, all my friends. In the meantime, while I was teaching elementary school, I still worked with high school band, marching bands, and taught trumpet lessons. And I played in the Raleigh, the community Raleigh Symphony, Triangle Wind Ensemble, and now I'm playing in the Triangle Brass Band. I think I turned to basically people I played gigs with and people in the Wind Ensemble, those that had just recently opened schools. So the last 4 schools that opened, I found out what their lists were. And then the other side of it, I think probably from my own history and what I had done, I kind of got the feeling for the community and what they valued, and then made band work with that. Because I think that's when I went and visited the school, there were parents taking off from work to watch their kid practice football, not just the game, but practice. So sports were a thing. And the principal admittedly knew nothing about music. And since it was a new school, there were not a lot of electives. There were not all these major accomplishments from anyone. And so I wanted to make band a thing. So I kind of made it like a sport a little bit. We had t-shirt days and we did fundraisers, and then I side faked them music. Then once they got hooked and they thought it was a thing, then the principal's like, "Oh, I have this X money. Can you spend it by the end of the day?" And I was like, "Oh, it's gone." It was easy to, it was easy to navigate once I made it a thing, and then you shape what you want them to learn. But the buy-in is tough at a new school unless you've kind of navigate what they value.
You've had success every stop of the way. And so what do you attribute that to? Do you have any sort of best practices or ideas that you carry with you no matter what?
I think I'm just going back to my first year when I took the job, and I'm teaching high school fresh out of college. And, I think they were playing grade 4, and I'm like, well, let's jump. Let's do, Do Not Go Gentle Into That Good Night, and let's do Gallop. And, because I like those pieces. So why not? I don't know how that worked, and I'm probably never going to understand that. But I think if you make the music your priority and the sound that you have in your head, you just use as many skills that you've learned at that time. I'm thinking back then, how did I know? I did a lot of singing. I had the kids sing. Now I could tell you that it's constant repetition. It's for middle school, it's constant repetition. The kids like to understand what they're doing, but the kids learn in so many different ways.
Can you tell me about your bands and what levels they are, how many students, and what kind of music are you playing with those groups?
So our school is set up a little different than your typical middle school program in North Carolina because of the magnet school. We run an 8-period day, and I teach 6 different bands during the day. And so there's 2 audition groups that we have, and 6th, 7th, or 8th graders could be in that. So you have auditions in around April, and pretty much that's a standard seating. I mean, it might change by a couple seats just depending on, how the trombones are, or flutes, or, tubas or whatever, but it's standard. I use around 65 each year for the Wind Ensemble, and I use a big jazz band because I feel like it's middle school,
Right.
if the seventh graders aren't in there, then I won't have eighth graders really, so I always double the saxes and not the bari. Just do 4 altos, 2 tenors, and a bari. But I double up on some of the saxophones and add. It's a bigger, 6 trombones, 6 trumpets. Double all the rhythm section.
So I'm looking at your schedule. I see on your website it has you have 3 concert bands. You have an intermediate wind ensemble and symphonic band, and then you have beginning brass and beginning woodwinds and percussion separated out.
Yes, I finally got it so that my brass is separate from woodwinds. And I literally go back and forth on if I'm going to start percussion or not, and if I'm going to start saxophone. I don't have really enough kids or me to start tuba and start things like bassoon and that type of thing. So right now I'm just starting because of this year. And because of the number, also when the kids are coming in from elementary school, if I have a large number of percussionists coming in, it's really tough to start percussion.
Right. You don't want to add to those numbers. Yeah.
Yeah. When I first got to the school, I had, I want to say 22 eighth grade percussionists and something ridiculous in the alto saxes. So then the kids max out, they can't get in the top groups, and then they're eighth graders in the lower bands, the third lowest band, and then they don't like that. So I try to, even though I let them pick what instrument they're going to try on, I try to also pace that, and it makes it a little bit more difficult because the bands are not by grade. So I might have an eighth grade tuba player in the third band. So I'm also thinking about that when they're going to high school. So I have enough eighth graders, enough seventh.
Sure. Why did you decide to put the percussion with the woodwinds?
Basically, I think the brass learn at a different pace than the woodwinds, and the percussion they need to get busy faster. They have too much time. But currently, right now, I'm holding on percussion until second semester with the number of kids in my intermediate band coming in from elementary school. I'm holding. So right now, I'll just have flute, clarinet, trumpet, trombone.
That's interesting that you have to balance that out based on what's coming in. So, one of those we see from time to time on the internet and the Facebook groups, people talk about how do we decide what our balance is and what do we let kids play? And how do you do that? How do you handle those decisions with kids?
Well, it's kind of like I was saying about deciding whether to start percussion or not. I've done many different things, but the last 3 years I talked to Wendy Higdon and started implementing her recruitment. Not totally, because she does an amazing job with it, but really started to allow the kids. I bring in retired band directors and some friends that I swap off with, and literally the kids get to choose what they want. The past 2 years I had saxophone and percussion in it, but with this year and how our numbers were, I just said, these are you're starting, and then we can branch out from there. But they all got their first choice. So, what's weird? I don't have that many flutes.
I don't either.
It's really strange.
Are we in is this just a cultural thing at the moment? Are we in a context where flute is down?
I have no idea because I just don't even know. I mean, this is year 27. I'm like, whoa, we need flutes. I mean, I added something where when they decided what they wanted to play, I had these sheets and they were all different colors. They were color coded. And so the kid went up and took this, sign that said, I'm going to play the trumpet. And we took their picture and posted it. And then we started making a list of the trumpets so the kids could see, what they were going to play and who else. And, I don't know, it just seemed like it worked really well so that the parents could. And the best part about that is the parents are there at the table as the kids are trying it out. And, they get to, a lot of times I want Susie to play clarinet because I play clarinet or because that's what Susie should play. And then Susie gets there and loves the trombone. And because they're a part of the process, they don't fight it like they would when we had the meeting separate,
Yeah, no, I noticed that. This year was the first year at my new job that I was able to have the instrument night in the spring. And I only have 25 fourth graders, so it's not a huge number. But I only had about 17 or 18 families show up to the tryouts. And the only people who have given me any grief about the instruments their kids are playing are those who weren't at that night.
There's a buy-in when they're a part of the decision, I think.
Yeah, I agree.
And the kid really gets to pick what one they like the sound of or which one comes natural. I mean, who knows? I chose trumpet probably because it was loud. I don't know.
I chose trumpet because my best friend chose trumpet.
Ah, there you go. When that could have been.
To this very day, I think I should have played the trombone. I still think that.
Wow. I wish I had played horn because it's just cool.
So your program has a big honor this year. You are taking your jazz ensemble to Midwest.
Yeah, it's really exciting. I had no idea I knew what I was getting into, but how could I say I had no idea? Because there are not a lot of folks in the area where I teach we go to Midwest, but we have not done the whole Midwest routine of applying and getting in and then picking the music. And so I had to reach out. The last school, Dave Albert, took Leesville, the concert band or their symphonic band in 2001. That's the last group that went from North Carolina. So I was very fortunate to have met some folks that helped me, Robert Herrings and at Henry, Artie Henry in Texas, helped me with a lot of the ideas that were coming up, just little things that I didn't know if it was 50% new music or 80%. I'd heard these whisperings, but nothing's really out there for you to know until they send the first memo. And then it's like in 2 weeks, you need to have the music. So, there's sort of there's not that network here. So I just reached out and people were really helpful.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think in choosing music for Midwest, for me, it was tough because, first of all, I'm not really a jazz person.
That's an interesting thing to say.
Yeah, I mean, I've learned. I played in like the B band at Maryland for like a semester in college. And I played in my high school jazz band, which was really more like a stage band because we went, from playing Little Darlin' to Satin Doll to like Lionel Richie. So
Sure. That was my high school experience too.
Yeah, it was definitely a stage band. And then in college it was a big band, and I really didn't do a lot with it. And then when I got at the one of the middle school that I was able to open, my friend that I had reached out to, one of my friends had said, we got this club time. And he said, you could do a jazz band, because there were a couple kids that had been in elementary school. He said, just make it any instrument. And so that's kind of where that started. And then the jazz band became a thing there. And it's just like, we ended up with 2 jazz bands, and there were over 44 kids in the jazz band. And then I had to hire somebody, and then we were doing it after school at the same time. And it just got really big. So I started learning jazz, and my stepson actually goes to Juilliard and is a jazz bass major. So, and is now working on his double, like a bachelor's and master's at the same time. So I've learned a lot really through jazz with him. With all of the things he's done, and picked up a lot from going to professional development and going to the master classes and all the ensembles that he did growing up, and then I was learning. And so I think a lot of the style jazz that I like is the older swing style, Basie and Ellington, and I like Mingus too. So, and I like some bebop, right? But the really newer stuff. So I was really worried when I was picking music for Midwest that I would be able to find the newer things, but it was easy. Like you just, you go through a lot, listen to a lot, and it was fun to have all of those opportunities.
Yeah. And so, I was a high school teacher before I went and got my doctorate. And I've told this story before. I just had Matthew Arau from Lawrence University on.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And he's a wonderful jazz musician. And I mentioned that, when I taught high school in California, I was in Monterey County, and the Monterey County jazz musicians would come by once a month and visit every school. in the county.
Wow.
And so they'd come and, a trumpet player would come out and a trombone player would come out, a sax player, a rhythm, drummer, so they'd come out and work with my kids. And I just remember being so clueless about what I was doing, but I would listen constantly. I was always working on things, going to professional development. But is there any advice you'd give to a young director who might not be as familiar with jazz that they can sort of latch onto and find hope from, I guess?
Well, I think just in the fact that I am not a jazz musician and I have gone from knowing absolutely nothing about jazz and not letting my kids ever tongue stop because that's so horrible. And at first when I did teach jazz, I didn't let them tongue stop because I was like, I've spent this long getting you not to tongue stop. I'm not going to let you start now. But now but the kids have to, it's a thing. So I would think just listening. I mean, was it one of my former students said when we do a summer camp, and a lot of our students are involved in a community program, Triangle Youth Jazz. And they actually have been to Ellington. I think it's like 4 years in a row, maybe now, or they made it to New York. So to play, and they've up to 3 bands now. And so not all of our kids do that, but a good percentage have done that. And it's really fun to see, the kids that I used to teach now in high school playing like that. It's fantastic. What a treat.
Sure.
But I think listening, and what one of my students said is, you don't know what you don't know. And that's so tough. It is so tough. But the amount of detailed listening and what to listen for. And it's just, we're very in the jazz field. The thing that I like the most is people will come play and work with your kids all the time. Yeah. You just ask Jim Ketch, who's at UNC Chapel Hill, the trumpet teacher and jazz teacher there. He's fantastic, and he's done so much for our community. And they'll come out, and really, Wes Parker is at NC State. And Wes is actually doing a sabbatical. And one of the things he's working on, he's a director of jazz. He's working on teaching improv to middle school students, like putting together a method book. And so we are his guinea pigs this year, which is going to be fun.
Oh, cool. Then that's going to help a lot for your performance. Yeah. And well, teaching improvisation is pretty difficult. I found that the 2 hardest things for me to teach were the rhythm section and improv.
Yeah, I think that's the rhythm section. When my students would go to an honor band, that's where the director always started. They always started fixing the rhythm section. Yep. And the thing I always didn't do was fix the rhythm section first. I would fix the wind players because that's where I think I was more familiar. And then I've learned, and a friend of mine told me after doing one of the honor bands, he said, the rhythm section is basically your kids and they're in 7th grade. You should apply for the state convention because 75% of your jazz band is going to be your rhythm section. And I was like, what? It's not. He's like, yeah, really it is. Because if they can swing, the rest of them will catch on much faster. I mean, the drummer directs the band. So they set up the band, play with the band. They decide the dynamics, tempo, everything, the phrasing. So learning that and learning. I did the jazz band directors workshop at Jazz at Lincoln Center this summer, and we did a lot with Basie band, and the push from the rhythm section and the lag behind from the winds and how that all functions is really, when a band's swinging or not. I'd know, but I wouldn't know how to make it better. So it's been fun to work on things like that. And as far as improv, I am, I'm like the world's worst as far as not. I'm working a lot with theory this year. However, that being said, I don't think how jazz was invented was some people analyzing chord structure and doing 2-5-1s. Like, I don't think the analyzation is what happened later. I think some people were jamming and they were playing what sounded good to them. And it's a melody, when kids start. And starting with the blues is great because it's a foundation, but, take a melody and change it. Or we do one note wonder where everybody, even the most advanced kid, can only play one note. And, they have to make rhythm with it too. And the latest thing I came up with for teaching improv, and I'm not sure if it seems to work for us. And basically it's the students, you're trying to train them to first transcribe, but like not writing it down, just, imitate what somebody's playing or somebody's solo. And so we'll take one or two measures and have one of the more advanced students, or we did summer band camp. This is our third year, I think, fourth. And it was I mainly started it to teach my beginners. And through teaching, to be able to pay for folks for every instrument, I was like, well, I'll do concert band in the afternoon, and that'll be a bigger group, and then I added jazz in the morning against the same time as the beginners. Anyway, we had over 125 kids, I think. And then all the high schoolers can be a teacher, and I'm doing quotes, but you can't see it. They get a free t-shirt, and they can be a camp counselor. So they love coming back and teaching. So it's fun to get them to set up and start playing for the kids, and the kids imitate back. But then eventually we move on that every kid plays a measure, and the whole band has to imitate it back, even if it's not great. It's what's funny is some little kid, for the first time, plays something really, really soft, and they're scared, and it's not, played with an exclamation. It's played with a giant question mark, but the whole band will play it back for them with this exclamation. And it sounds like they made that, I made that happen, and you can just see their little eyes, and then it goes on to the next person. And it's not such a big thing where it's like a whole solo. So kids get, they get more comfortable. So that's been a thing we're doing, and I like it. I like what it does for all the kids.
So Renee, I want to ask you one more question about your program, and that's the website, which I think is terrific. Can you talk to me about the importance of having a good website and what it provides for your program?
Well, for us in general, in our small state size of band programs, we are a magnet school. So a lot of parents will look at our website when they're deciding on which school to send their kids or to apply for. But also I found the website to be a tool really for the parents to kind of know what my expectations are. Also when we do Google Forms, I think it's the same way. If she's asking this must be a thing. So I do a lot of, like I was saying earlier, I'm a big data person. So I like doing a lot of research on different websites and different band programs. And I guess that's stalking, isn't it? Okay. So, but I, as teachers, we often copy or we imitate. And I think that's probably what I've had a lot of good mentors, and I've had a lot of information that I've used that I've taken from one school to the next. And as far as the website itself, I think it represents your program to someone that's not in the state. And knowing that we have Midwest coming up and Music for All, I mean, I looked at and the other middle school jazz bands that are playing at Midwest. The first thing I did was check them out, La Villa, which is in Florida, and Bradley, that's in Texas. I'm so excited that there's 3. Sometimes there's not even a middle school jazz band at Midwest. And so for there to be 3, it's really cool. We all got together at the meeting, and that we're having the kids, they'll all watch each other's performance. But on Wednesday night, we're renting the Jazz Showcase. It's a jazz place in Chicago, and they don't serve food, but we're going to have a jam session. So it's going to be like an after party. But they're going to get to play together cross bands. This is what jazz bands like in Florida or Texas, for my kids would be cool. And we're going to bring in Giordano's Pizza, and that's going to be our jazz after party.
That's awesome. And I didn't even notice, because the Midwest sucks all the oxygen out of the room. You are also taking your wind ensemble to Music for All. I completely missed that.
Yeah, it's going to be a great year.
Yeah, I guess so.
I'm looking forward to it.
Renee, I can't help but ask, do you have any pieces of music that you really love to play with your bands? Anything you keep going back to?
I love Grainger. I think Grainger is wonderful. It challenges all of the kids. And it also is, it's folk song based. So the kids walk down the hall, singing children's march. So it's just hysterical. Look at these guys. And when I like things that I loved Mackey's Sheltering Sky. I love doing Undertow. I love doing Cait. What's Cait's last name? Aris just turned me onto this Chasing Sunlight.
Cait Nishimura.
Yeah. So it's not always I liked when we did Swirling Prisms, sort of that big swoop of a giant phrase and then the small little ones with fast pacing under it. Those are fun to do. And then there's the standards,
Sure.
But I do like the kids. I think in middle school, I'm listening to, reflecting after doing, festivals and our NPA or assessment, whatever your state calls it. I always try to me, those instances are letting me know how I'm teaching the kids that are in front of me. And so sometimes it's that one of the biggest things I think as a brass player too, getting kids to move air, and then I've had to work on them backing off on the articulation, which we weren't super hard on, but we could do less. And so we back off on articulation. And then I've always been really big on note endings and style that way. But we don't start together. And so, I've heard that same thing from, the Floyds 2 years ago and comments, we're not starting together. And I've been, so I made sure I was using metronome a lot. Part of it, I feel like, has to do with the schedule, like the magnet and the kind of everything's crazy. It's probably like that at every middle school, but there's a lot of transition with 8 periods and the school is old. So it has lots of hallways that are tiny. And so kids have to really haul to get anywhere in 5 minutes and feel like sometimes they come in and it's hectic and it's not as calm. So I'm working on the calm part. I'm doing something totally different this year. And I finally got a harmony director. So that's going to be cool. But I use that kind of thing for feedback and then try to pick music that's going to inspire the kids or that will teach the kids a lot that of the concepts I think we need to develop on as a band.
Do you do any breathing exercises at the beginning to calm them down?
I do. I've done, the first time I did it at Ligon, we were doing breathing gym and I taught the, paper, the airplane and the dart and the bow and arrow. Second day, we do it. And one of the smart little trumpet players sails a paper airplane across the band. And it was like my new job. So like how I handled that was going to determine, and I was like, well, is it safe to do dart? I was like, what's going to happen next? And everybody laughed. So we just moved on. But I made him go get the paper airplane. But they got used to it and it was different. And yeah, we do breathing. Yeah. There's still there's an energy in the school that's really awesome. But it is a lot of energy. And so sometimes, I always wonder why kids can't subdivide. I think you have to be very present in what you're doing. And sometimes it's hard for adults to do that. It's definitely hard for middle schoolers.
All right, Renee. So I'm going to ask you the group of questions I ask all of my guests. And they're kind of big, broad questions meant to kind of get your feelings on what we do sort of as a profession.
Okay.
And the first of these is, where do you draw the line between healthy and unhealthy competition in music?
I think when I was younger, that was a lot harder to do. When I first started doing high school band, I got to the end of the year and I really reflected, do the means justify the ends or the ends justify the means? And now I'm luckily about 4 years ago, the year we were doing the state convention for the first time, and our school did the whole growth mindset as our reading, our book we were doing as a school. And I was really fortunate for that because it really helped me to really focus more on the process. And if all of that's happening, it'll all work out. And I think as far as I've moved away from, we really don't do a lot of the festivals where they're the trophies and all that kind of stuff. I mean, that's fine and it has its place. But we've done more of the music for all or the regional ones where there's not a scoring type thing. I think NPA, some folks think that the assessment is not, it's also a competitive thing. I think, like I was saying before, it just gives me feedback on, how the job that I'm doing with teaching the kids. I kind of go in every day, the whole teach like your hair's on fire. That's still, I'm not the calm teacher. I had someone come in and observe the band one time and he was like, you should be very calm. And I tried it and the kids all thought I was sick. They were like, Miss Todd, what's wrong? It's just like really, you got to go fast or you won't get everything in. So they were kind of used to that and I really flipped them out. They're like, are you okay? Something's really wrong. But as far as competitive, I don't think time management is something different. But as far as the competitive part, I think you just want to make good music. And to me, the standard is you want the kids to feel successful because I feel like that's the biggest reward. The first time they get chill bumps, the first time they have this experience of playing in something and being a part of and making it much bigger than, the sum of the parts, kind of thing. The first time they have that experience and I remember the first time I had it, I was actually in a chorus. I mean, that kind of experience, on our chorus situation. I want those moments and they don't always happen at a festival or NPA type thing, but that the goal, the date that you're going somewhere, it kind of hypes that up, I think, to allow the kids. And for some reason, I mean, we've hosted events, like we've hosted the assessment before. And one year when we were hosting, I was like, well, this doesn't cost any money if my kids play, all my kids, like our beginners played. I was like, well, we've gone to 3 days now and there's enough space. And I didn't even tell the beginners anything about the rubric. I didn't tell them about the assessment. I didn't tell them about ratings. I didn't tell them about anything. Now, they were helping guide bands, so they started trying to figure stuff out. But we just worked on playing good music. And so, like, all the groups went. And we just worked on playing good music,
So I just want to mention for everyone who is listening, you mentioned the Growth Mindset book. That's by Carol Dweck.
Yes.
How do you find a work-life balance in your career as a music teacher?
It's tough. I mean, my family, it's all musicians. So it's really hard to sometimes separate it. I mean, it seems like one of the things I changed at my school, being the only director. I mean, there's an orchestra teacher who does the strings, and we trade off doing the musicals in the spring, directing the pit and that type of thing. But I'm pretty much the band. There's not anyone else unless we've done. I'm doing fundraisers now. I'm bringing folks in to do percussion and sectionals, but it's still I'm running the band. So I worked to start a band council because I was like, a lot of what we do, because of our schedule, because of the things we do, sometimes activities, it runs more like maybe old school marching band or, a little bit more like high school, not marching band, excuse me. So I was like, why don't we have a leadership team? Like, why aren't these kids learning, Scott Lang, Dr. Tim, Scott Rush, like all the folks. Why am I not doing this? So I can have a team that's going to change the culture, change the mindset, and then the kids, things are going to be different. And we started it, and it's been a great help. Sometimes it's more time at first, but then it pays off in the end. But I do teach private lessons outside, and I play in a group. So yeah, I'm always working on that. It's hard. I think it's hard to always close the computer. I envy, like I was speaking to the dance teacher today, and she said, "Oh, I don't do any work at home." And I just like looked at her like she was a foreign person, like alien type. I was just like, none, just none. I get up sometimes, 5, 4 in the morning to have the time to think, and about what we're planning. Sometimes things are so busy, it's hard to do. But I envy the people who can do things super fast. And it takes me, like everything I've done that I really wanted to do and do a good job, it's just taken time. And I have to decide, is it that time more valuable than, not doing a good job or not? So but it is something I struggle with, and I've tried to put, like on my social media and stuff, I put those little timers on. It's good. It's been great.
I find that the only thing that helps me with social media is for me to just turn it off.
Turn it completely, yeah.
Yeah, I can't even, yeah.
I cut off notifications, so that's been helpful.
That's a good idea. That's a really good idea.
And then part of it is because I did it with the kids can't have their phones on their stand anymore for tuners. I bought tuners. So if they have their phone, and I've been buying some percussion. So, and then I think with jazz setup, the room is just getting smaller. And so we do backpacks out in the hall. So the kids put their phones under their chair facing down because they get so many notifications.
All right. So that might lead nicely into our next conversation. What are the
social media?
What are the challenges facing music education, and how can we best meet them?
I think with the level of digital access that all kids have, whether they have access to their devices at night or not, I think it's easy for them to separate themselves from others. And I think one of the great things through music we can do is keep that introduced to them, that they can be a part of something bigger than they are, that, by themselves. And that there's a lot of, I'm just seeing a lot more anxiety and issues with kids, like just dealing with, existing. And that's sad. That's super sad. And so I think more opportunities for them, more performances. And then the other side of things, it's not, you can't just I've done that in rehearsal. Alexa, can you fix all the B flats? But it's not instant. Playing an instrument is not instant. And playing balance and blend, understanding that you're the motor in this section and you're important, but your dynamic's not important. Like your intensity is important, but you're not the loudest thing. But over here's the melody. We want to hear this more, but they're not the motor. So kids trying to make decisions and about how they fit in something and getting out of their head, getting out of their head about them, I think is a great thing. The team building, all of that. Doing band council has been fantastic as far as getting the kids to care. One of the second year, one of my kids came in and, this kid had made first year all county, first year all district, state, and when he wrote down his goals was for his entire section to make all county. So, and it didn't say anything about him, it was just for his section to make it. And it's little things like that. And so my response was, well, what are you going to do to help that? And so he started setting up after school sessions, to work with the other kids. And to me, that's the coolest thing.
All right, Renee, if I could give you a time machine and program it to the day of your high school graduation, what advice would you tell yourself?
Wow. So I think breathe. It's okay. I think I've always gone, it's tough. Just my element. Try to do everything at once. I think that's what I would say. I would remind myself that, your best resource are your former teachers and your friends, your mentors, to reach out. It's okay to reach out. I've always been okay with making mistakes because that's not been a thing for me, but I think reaching out and asking for help is important.
If you had a choice, what would be the final work for wind ensemble or band that you'd want to conduct or perform?
I think if it was like a really good group, Lincolnshire Posy, if it's like a really good middle school group, maybe Sheltering Sky or something pretty like that.
All right, Renee, we've talked about Midwest. We talked about Music for All. Is there anything else coming up that you'd like to share or promote? I
am keeping my eyes on those two things right now, but it's year 27, so I've got to plan 3 years out. That's about it. But that's kind of what we're working on.
All right, Renee, finally, how can people get in touch with you?
Our email is Ligon Band, Ligon, at gmail.com. Our website is ligonband.com, and social media when I have it on. So
excellent. Renee, thank you so much.
Oh, this was great. What a treat.